CBS News, 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
Our hearts are with the families, and to all the families, we are so sorry for this tragedy.
Tonight, former President Barack Obama and Bill Clinton are joining President Biden for a fundraiser in New York City.
Many Democrats, we still believe in those ideals, but unfortunately, as an institution, it has lost its way.
Hi, I'm Scott McFarland in Washington, and welcome to America Decides. Officials are turning their attention toward clearing the debris from the Baltimore bridge collapse after authorities paused search efforts for 4 people who are presumed dead there. The Navy says it's mobilizing barges outfitted with cranes to help clear the river. Maryland estimates the cleanup, mobilization, and debris recovery will cost $60 million. Lawmakers, meanwhile, are discussing how the federal and state governments should share the costs to address the overall disaster. Maryland Governor Wes Moore spoke about the work that still needs to be done.
The best minds in the world are coming together to collect the information that we need to move forward with speed and safety in our response to this collapse. Government is working hand in hand with industry to investigate the area, to clear the wreck, and to move the ship.
Camilo Montoya Galvez joins us now from Dundalk, Maryland. Camilo, we know you spoke with the brother of one of those workers presumed dead. What's he saying? What's he's saying in reaction to everything happening there on the ground, too?
Scott, Carlos Alexis told us that his brother, Minor, was a decent, funny, and big-hearted family man who came to the U.S. roughly 18 years ago from Honduras. He was the first in a group of siblings to immigrate to the U.S. And Carlos Alexis told us about the last time he was able to embrace and see his brother. Let's take a listen. When you were talking to him on Sunday, did you ever think that was going to be the last time you saw him?
No.
No.
Me preguntan a mí, ¿qué es lo último que te faltó decir? Si yo lo hubiera sabido, no lo dejo ir a trabajar. El hijo no tengo, no lo dejo ir. Si me tú presentías, Dios mío, ¿cómo voy a saber?
You would have stopped him from going to work if you had known. Scott, there's clearly a lot of anguish in these communities, and one of the reasons for that is that some of these families have not received any closure. While Carlos Alexis recognizes that his brother is almost certainly gone, the body has not been found.
In this unprecedented event, there's so many things one can say, but what else is he saying about the unique tragedy behind this particular sequence of events?
Scott, Carlos Alexis said that what happened to his brother and these other construction workers should serve as a tragic reminder to other immigrants and other workers doing dangerous jobs that they should not risk their lives for another dollar, as he put it. That is something that he wants people in the broader U.S. to take away from this tragic incident. Another challenge for this family is how to explain this to Minor's 6-year-old daughter. She's very young, she's still in school, and Minor's brother told us that she believes her father is still at work.
There's so much to do to get the debris, the remains out of the water from the Key Bridge. What's your sense of what the priority is right now? What is the urgency of this moment for people on the scene in Baltimore?
Well, right now, for the families at least, the urgency is getting some finality and also closure, finding the bodies, being able to honor their loved ones, being able to potentially repatriate them back to places like Honduras, Mexico, and Guatemala, being able to honor their lives. And again, for many of them, that's still a major challenge that while they recognize that the conditions in the water, the amount of time that has passed mean that their loved ones are almost certainly gone, they don't have that official announcement and that official evidence that their loved ones are indeed gone. And so that is a major challenge that I think authorities know about and are tackling right now.
As the evening began in Baltimore, what were the latest updates you were getting from authorities there? What are they trying to get out?
Well, authorities right now are still trying to recover these bodies. The weather here is not helping, and so that is a major challenge for authorities here, Scott.
Now, about that, Camilla, what should we take away from the fact that those presumed dead were immigrants?
Well, immigration has always been a contentious debate here in the U.S., Scott, and we're having a very polarizing debate on this issue as we speak because of the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border. But I think most people here recognize that this country quite literally has been built by ways of immigration, from the Chinese immigrants who built the railroads in the West in the 19th century to the Irish and Italian immigrants fleeing famine and poverty who built the cities on the East Coast, to the backbreaking work that African Americans have done in this country, to Latin American immigrants who today are building our bridges, who are picking our crops, and who are keeping the lights on in many key industries. And these jobs are essential, but they are also perilous, as was tragically illustrated earlier this week. But many immigrants do them because they want to provide for their families, they want to send money back home, and because they want to chase their American dream. And after all, that was the desire that Minor had when he came to the U.S. when he was 20 years old.
All right, Camilo Montoya Galvez, thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott.
President Biden and 3 former presidents are all visiting New York today. The Biden campaign says it expects to rake in more than $25 million at a star-studded fundraiser in Manhattan tonight. Former presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton will be there, too. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump attended a wake on Long Island for a New York police officer shot and killed during a traffic stop earlier this week. Our Caitlin Huey-Burns is in New York monitoring all of this. Let's begin with the fundraiser. Caitlin, what is the Biden campaign saying about how significant this event and this hall could be?
Hey, Scott, good to see you. We have kind of a parade of presidents here in New York. As you mentioned, Obama, Clinton joining Biden, and lots of celebrities here in New York. They say they've raised $25 million through this, which they say is a political fundraising record. And that's significant because that further bolsters Biden's lead in the cash hunt, at least at this point, even as he lags behind Donald Trump in the polls. On hand in the bank, the Biden campaign has about $71 million compared to the Trump campaign's about $33.5 million. That's significant too, Scott, because as you know, the former president has had to spend a lot of time, but also a lot of money on legal fees. Just in the last month, in February, a super PAC supporting his campaign spent about $5 million on legal fees alone. So there's cash disadvantage that Donald Trump has is a significant one, even furthered by this fundraiser today.
As we await this rematch of the 45th and the 46th president, let's talk about the 44th some more. Former President Obama. How involved has he been in President Biden's attempt to win re-election?
Well, Democrats say that Obama, rather, is the most popular Democrat that they have. I mean, for the years since he's left office, he has been a top campaigner for Democrats. Lots of candidates are happy to bring him in to try to turn out votes, but more importantly, to try and raise money. Last week, Obama was at the White House with Biden and cut an ad, or cut a video, I should say, marking the anniversary of the Affordable Care Act. And so you can expect him to be involved in this campaign, which we know is going to be a very close one. Polls show a tied race, and lots of polls show Biden behind Trump in some key battleground states that are going to determine this presidential race. So we'll kind of look to see what the former President Obama does here, but this kind of fundraising and really galvanizing the base. A lot of strategists believe this is going to be a base versus base election. So these kinds of events today, not only bringing in money, but exciting the Democratic base at a time where, as we know from polls, not a lot of folks are excited about this rematch.
As for former President Trump at this New York police officer wake on Long Island, what's he saying outside of this event? What's his approach to going to this event?
Yeah, also in New York today, this kind of split screen that we are seeing. But what's significant here is that the former President Trump is really using this wake and this funeral to also further his campaign message. When he made a point to kind of stage a press availability at the wake, outside the wake, surrounded by police officers, saying that we have to have law and order, in his words. So really using that moment to further his own campaign message here, especially in New York, as he is being out fundraised by his rival.
And a scorching response from retired Capitol Police Sergeant Aquilino Gonell, injured on January 6th, saying Donald Trump does not back the blue, as was shown, he says, on January 6th. All right, in New York, with all of this, Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you very much. U.S. House Republicans will send 2 articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to the Senate on Wednesday, April 10th. House Speaker Mike Johnson and 11 House impeachment managers informed Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer earlier today about the timetable. The Democratic-led Senate is expected to quickly terminate impeachment efforts. In a narrow decision last month, the House made Mayorkas the first cabinet secretary to be impeached in nearly 150 years. The charges require a vote by 2/3 of the Senate to convict Mayorkas and remove him from office. Next, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s former campaign manager turned congressional candidate joins us to analyze independent candidates and their potential impact at the ballot this November. You're streaming America Decides.
Mr. President, there's a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about.
If China invades Taiwan, what will the U.S. Navy do?
Here in Tel Aviv, second siren in about 10 minutes.
This Humvee just pulled up and said, it's time to leave.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Stories start with the who, what, when, and where. But it's why it's important to you that matters most. Knowing what to ask is how you open the door to a deeper understanding. See you on Prime Time, streaming free everywhere.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm is a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely. As Taiwan faces threats and aggression.
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, they are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
record-breaking storm surge and devastating wind.
every second counts.
The mud punched a hole right through the wall.
See, hear, feel the forecast. Tonight on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell.
You can understand why I gravitated to the Democratic Party. Because that was supposed to be the party of peace, the party of compassion. Many Democrats, we still believe in those ideals, but unfortunately, as an institution, it has lost its way.
Welcome back to America Decides. That was Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s running mate, Nicole Shanahan, on her displeasure with the Democratic Party. DNC officials are raising concerns that RFK Jr.'s 2024 bid could benefit Donald Trump in November. Let's bring in former Ohio Congressman, former mayor of Cleveland, Dennis Kucinich, who joins us. He once served as RFK's campaign manager. That was until October. Now running as an independent for Congress, where he served for so long. Mr. Kucinich, thank you for your time. A lot of your fellow former colleagues, former Democratic colleagues, a lot of the independents from whom you're seeking votes in Ohio have concerns that RFK Jr.'s candidacy is going to mean 4 years of Donald Trump. How do you respond to their concerns?
Well, first of all, Scott, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you about the campaign. As you stated, I'm no longer with the Kennedy campaign. I have my own campaign for Congress. Anybody interested could go to Kucinich.com. But with respect to the Kennedy candidacy, I think his candidacy puts pressure on both parties to address the economic issues that are vexing American families right now. You've had real wages go down, the cost of housing and rent, the cost of childcare go up. I think Americans are concerned about the price of food. These economic issues are driving people to make decisions, and will drive them to make decisions about who they're going to vote for president. And I think that in some ways it's an issue that transcends parties. The parties are under pressure to deliver on the economic issues. And if they don't do that, then people are going to look at Mr. Kennedy's candidacy ever more closely.
Sounds like you're arguing this may be an attempt to leverage the Democratic Party to change its positions or change its messaging more so than a true version of a campaign that can win.
Well, I think Mr. Kennedy, and I'm not speaking for him at this point, but I think he would say that the fact that there's 43% of Americans who identify themselves as independents, according to Gallup a couple months ago, 27% Republicans, 27% Democrats, that there is an opening in American politics. I feel the same way at a congressional level, that there's an opening in American politics for a new direction. Whether or not he'll be able to move into that is remains to be seen. Certainly, Nicole Shanahan's choice gives him an opportunity to call to the campaign even more attention on the range of issues that she's concerned about. But look, I'll just go back to the point. If we're looking at our politics as only Democrat and Republican, people are feeling there's constraint in the choices. With the economic issues being unresolved for millions of American families, I think we're looking at that's the opening. Whether or not Mr. Kennedy's campaign will be able to exploit that remains to be seen. And it's not about him having leverage. It's about there needs to be a debate in this country about the direction the country's going. My approach is country above party. And I think more and more Americans are starting to say, hey, wait a minute, if the current system isn't producing the things that we need, maybe it's time to start looking at alternatives. And from my point of view, look, I'm not saying anything to condemn Democrats or Republicans. I was elected to Congress with the help of Republicans. My campaign's inclusive. It's about addition and multiplication, not about division and subtraction. So that's the approach that I take, and I would urge all candidates, whatever lane they're running in, to take that approach.
I want to ask you about Congress and your campaign in a moment. One final question to button up this issue of the presidential race. Since you became familiar with the Kennedy campaign, you know about independent runs, in what states, in what areas do you think a Kennedy candidacy or another third-party candidate could potentially impact the outcome?
Obviously, before I left the campaign, I looked at the electoral map. And it would be up to the Kennedy campaign to disclose the analysis that I did. But I saw then, and it's possible now, if he can get on the ballot, that his campaign could take off in the closing months of the election. But that at this point, because I'm not managing the campaign, I can't offer you any special insight. But the numbers are there, and I just quoted Gallup, and there's a restlessness going on. The people in both parties are concerned about the nominees, and it really has to go beyond the individuals running for president and who's going to address the economic issues that Americans are concerned about. Just the other day, you had the director of the Congressional Budget Office saying that if we keep going in the direction that we are with debt, that we're looking at market shock. The bond markets are worried. Interest rates are a factor here. I mean, there's economic issues that are affecting the American people. And whichever candidate or candidates of the candidates are able to signal directly to the people that they have a path forward that will help alleviate the kind of tension that exists in households across the country where Americans are drowning in debt, whether it's auto and credit. I think most families are looking at about $6,500 a year in interest costs, with mortgages about $6,700 a year in interest costs. These economic issues are compelling for people. Let's see if the candidates for president are going to address them. I can tell you this is one candidate for Congress who will.
Real quickly, Mr. Kucinich, what would you do differently in Congress with an I next to your name instead of a D?
Well, first of all, when I'm on the ballot in Ohio, it's just going to be Dennis Kucinich. It's a name that people know well. I served almost half of the district for 16 years in Congress and was elected with support from across the spectrum. As an independent, I could very well end up in a closely divided Congress as the only independent, being a swing vote. And I would communicate to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle a path towards unity in this country. The people of America are hungry for an approach towards unity. They want to tap into that underlying unity that makes us the United States. And this partisan fracturing, this polarization that's going on, people are having difficulty seeing how that's serving the country. So I think that I can help be a calm hand on the fevered brow of this country, that I can help bring Democrats and Republicans together in the interests of Americans. And if it's a 217 partisan split in the Congress and one independent, I have the experience, the knowledge, the wisdom to be able to help guide this country with that single vote.
Dennis Kucinich in Cleveland, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The judge in the Georgia 2020 election conspiracy case held a key hearing today while former President Trump's lawyers want the indictment thrown out. You're streaming America Decides.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered
there's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
This is CBS.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. A judge in the Georgia 2020 election case heard arguments today over whether former President Trump's claims about the election were protected by his First Amendment rights. Trump's lawyers argued that they are, and that the indictment should be dismissed. The judge did not issue a ruling on this issue today, though. Trina Kaufman joins us now from New York. Trina, you watched these hearings, you watched the arguments. What did Trump's lawyers and the prosecution each say before the judge?
Hi, Scott. So, as you were saying, Trump's lawyers were arguing that this entire indictment should be thrown out because every single charge that Fani Willis has leveraged against him actually implicates core political speech and expressive conduct. And they say that that means it's protected by the First Amendment. In fact, they said if you take out the political speech, there are no criminal charges left here. Now, the DA pointed to D.C., where in the election interference case there, the judge, Tanya Chutkan, already assessed this issue of the First Amendment. And she actually said that the First Amendment, it doesn't protect speech that's in furtherance of criminal activity. And the DA argued that Trump's behavior falls in line with that.
I want to shift to somebody else who's relevant in this Georgia case, the former Trump legal advisor, John Eastman. The judge elsewhere recommended that John Eastman be disbarred over his conduct in 2020. What was the judge's reasoning there?
Now, the judge said that John Eastman committed serious ethic violations and maybe even violated criminal law when he advanced Trump's theory that the 2020 election was stolen. She said that he made false factual representations about voter fraud, about the fake elector scheme, and that he also pushed this theory that Mike Pence could stop the electoral votes from being counted. Another thing she pointed to was his lack of remorse about his behavior, that he seemed to not think that he had done anything wrong in this situation. And so she recommended disbarment and a $10,000 fine for him. His law license is going to be inactive. He does, in fact, plan to appeal, though.
Let's talk a little bit more about 2020. You've been reporting that RNC job applicants and some of the potential Trump jurors are getting asked the same question for their thoughts about the outcome, the validity of the 2020 election. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so this is interesting. This question about whether or not the 2020 election was stolen is coming up in 2 very different contexts. At the RNC, they're interviewing candidates after firing over 60 people. And during these interviews, they're asking them their beliefs about whether or not the election was stolen, seemingly as a litmus test to see if they're loyal to former President Donald Trump. Now, this is also a question that I've been hearing in the courtrooms. It's being asked to jurors to see whether or not they can be fair and impartial during these trials. The DA, during the criminal trial that's going to be coming up in April, wants to ask this question because he says that if a juror thinks that the election was stolen, then it might show that they won't rely on facts in the case, that they might blindly follow what Trump says, and maybe that they won't even listen to the judge during the trial.
I think people are underestimating the impact and the drama that will be part of jury selection in these federal cases. Katrina Kaufman in New York, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Before we go today, it is opening day for Major League Baseball, and since this is a politics show, we thought it was only right to look back at presidents throwing out the first pitch at games. Back in 1934, it was President Franklin Roosevelt throwing out the first pitch at Washington's old Griffith Stadium. That's back where the Washington Senators were the home team. 28 years later, President John F. Kennedy would throw out the first pitch at Washington's new baseball stadium, which would be later named after his brother, RFK Stadium.
Please welcome the President of the United States.
And of course, how could anyone ever forget George W. Bush's first pitch in the Bronx before Game 3 of the 2001 World Series? That was just months after 9/11. The 43rd president put the ball right over the center of the plate. And just in case you're asked at trivia, the first president to do it? William Howard Taft, 1910. That does it for today. We're back with another edition of America Decides Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You're streaming CBS News.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We